Zhang on the Terrace of Gathered Spirits, number 2. The consort of state Guo received her master's favor. At dawn she galloped a horse through the palace gates. Because she felt makeup obscured her natural beauty, she wiped it off before entering the emperor's presence. So we continue with the second poem of a couple made by Zhang about the Yang family women, their influence on Emperor Tan Xuanzong. And as we commented yesterday when we talked about the first take of this poem, these poems are, on the one side, recent historical, because Zhang Hu is talking about events that took place not more than 50 years before his own time under the same dynasty, but which very soon became, epic and monumental, the fabled romance of Emperor Xuanzong and Yang Guifei, and the Anlushan rebellion, and the death of this lady. So the previous poem was about Zhang Guifei. This is about another woman. In this case, it's the consort of state Guo. Who was the consort of state Guo? She was an elder sister of Zhang Guifei. In fact, she was the third eldest sister, I think, of Zhang Guifei. She was also a beautiful, a stunning lady. She was married to an important aristocratic family. And she was an example, like Zhang Guifei, of one of those powerful women, so characteristic of the Tang dynasty, and which most of the stern Confucian misogynistic moralists would frown upon, both basing themselves on the traditions of corrupting seductresses that can lead an emperor astray, that can besot him and lead to massive political crisis. And of course, this tradition would continue later on during the Song and other dynasties, the Song being notorious for being even more restrictive of women's autonomy, and implanting the infamous custom of the binding of the feet. Anyway, going back here. So this poem is very similar to yesterday's poem. So in yesterday's poem, the main gist of the poem is like Jiang Guifei is more or less surreptitiously and hypocritically brought to the imperial palace as a presumed Taoist nun, while the real reason for her going into the palace is that she's going to become the emperor's concubine, and the emperor is bestowing his favor on her, and she acts a little bit frivolously, coquettishly in the last image of the previous poem, like smiling when she is entering the imperial palace. So here we get a similar story. So as we said, the consort of state Guo was Jiang Guifei's sister and was favored like her sister. She landed upon different gifts and positions of privilege for herself and her relatives. Rumors point to the fact that even though she was a married lady, she might have had intimate intercourse with the emperor, and this is hinted at in this poem, although not too explicitly stated. Like her sister, the Lady of Guo would be killed by the mutinied soldiers during the Anlushan rebellion, when the Yang clan, one of whose members, a cousin, I think, of or brother of Jiang Guifei, had been prime minister, when he was liquidated, and when the emperor was running away from Anlushan's troops, these two ladies, Yang Guifei and her sister, were also executed by the soldiers. So a tragic story at the end. Okay, so as we said in the previous poem, we had that image, the fake nun entering the palace and smiling wryly. Here we have a similar scene. We have the consort of Guo entering the palace. The first line clearly states that. And she's entering, she's galloping in, which is very striking. It very, very, very explicitly makes clear for a Chinese reader at the time the privileges which this woman had, riding in a horse by herself, entering the imperial palace. Generally, accessing the imperial presence was a very complicated bureaucratic procedure. So basically, we have this image of this importantly related woman of stunning beauty and of stunning privilege entering the most inaccessible of places in the empire with ease, as you know, as if she were just going for a ride in her horse, but she's entering the imperial palace and the imperial presence. And again, just like in the previous poem, we get an image of coquettishness, which I imagine is meant to be in to be seductive and likable and voyeuristic, like a lot of the images of beautiful women in Chinese poetry. But it's also censorious, like this frivolous corrupting woman. In the second couplet, this idea that she is so outstandingly and naturally beautiful that this woman doesn't need to apply makeup to improve her appearance or her seductiveness. So, topic of the poem, as we said, historical, courtly beauties with privilege, and there's an undercurrent of criticism at the emperor's besottedness with beautiful women, which would cause, in the opinion of the Chinese scholars, which would lead to the Anlushan rebellion. Okay, let's look at the poem couplet by couplet. As I said, there's a very clear caesura between the first and the second couplet, just as in the previous poem, although it's the other way around. In the previous poem, we had first a view of the palace and the indirect elements in nature that indicated, that prefigured someone receiving imperial favor, and then we had the Taoist, the pseudo Taoist nun entering the palace and smiling. Here we start the other way around. We start with the consort or the Lady of Guo entering the palace and showing off her privilege, the ease with which she can just go and gallop inside the imperial palace and see the emperor. And then in the second couplet, we get that the coquettish gesture, which in this case is the refusal to apply makeup. So first couplet. The consort of state Guo received her master's favor. At dawn, she galloped her horse through the palace gates. So, as we said, we get this is very visual. We get the image of this lady riding into her horse at dawn into the imperial palace. And remember, the access to the imperial palace was very strict, very regulated. Scholar officials who served at court entered the palace for a dawn audience. They had to pass through very lengthy checkups and inspections, and it was a lengthy process and very regulated. But this woman can just, take a horse and go through the gates, no problem. And the couplet said she receives her master's favor. What that favor is remains open to the reader to interpret. Maybe it's just benevolence and protection because she is the sister of a favored concubine, or maybe something else is also being implied. Second couplet, because she felt makeup obscured her natural beauty, she wiped it off before entering the emperor's presence. So she might have applied a little bit of makeup, but, she's thinking, and she's aware of her beauty. No beautiful woman is unaware of her beauty and the effect it can have on people. So she coquettishly brushes off maybe a little bit of makeup. I think in the original maybe it's mentioning makeup in the eyebrows, because I think it was a fashion of Tang women to decorate their brows, their foreheads, with different paintings, especially the eyebrows were one of these eroticized parts of the body, and their decoration and painting became, a metonymy for all sorts of decoration and painting and perfume and makeup for Tang Dynasty women. Anyway, so she gets this feeling, I don't think makeup is making me even more pretty. I think I'm prettier as is, in the natural. Yeah? So she wipes off, just before entering in front of the emperor, she's wiping away her makeup. And, this connects. So you could say this looks like an image of sincerity, like the beautiful woman doing away with the makeup. But, there is a double or triple level of interpretation, which does not make it necessarily a positive thing that she's wiping away the makeup. It's not that she's wiping away because she refuses to be a seductress or to seduce the emperor. It's rather that her beauty is so outstandingly immense that, she just doesn't need it. It rather it rather reduces than enhances her beauty, the fact that she presents herself as she is, as she looks. And again, it's a coquettish gesture. There is a woman obsessed with looking her best. In this case, without makeup, as opposed to the typical of with makeup. So a very similar poem to the previous one, and both contain these images of beautiful women, which are historical women and are also exposed to the voyeuristic glance of the reader, but they have this moralistic Confucian undercurrent of frivolous women with negative, even catastrophic effects on the country.